What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back for another review for you guys, and this is for the other big release that came out on the weekend of April 29th, as I am here to talk about, I believe this is the 7th studio album from Swedish black metal masters Watane, called The Agony and Ecstasy of Watain. So, kinda like a self-titled, but not quite. Either or. So, of course, the little brief backstory about Watane is that Watane formed all the way back in 1998 out of Uppsala and Stockholm, Sweden. And, of course, pretty much the members have been very much consistent throughout. Of course, vocalist and bassist Eric Danielsson, guitarist Hakon Johnson, and Pelle Forsberg, although for this album they would have guest musicians come in to do some guitars and the bass work, while Eric, Pelle, and Johnson are doing their typical shebang. Well, Johnson's actually just contributing more songwriting than playing whatsoever. But of course, Watane are world-renowned for their unique brand of black metal and how it implements lots of melodies and a little bit of like that melodic death metal feel, but done in their black metal style. Kind of, some of the bands you could hear Watane get compared to quite a bit are bands like Dissection and Mayhem, and even a little bit of Immortal and Dark Funeral and Necrophobic, even for more on the blackened death metal end of the scale. But let's hear what they had to offer for their new album. So we kick things off with Ecstasies in Night Infinite. Immediately, a melodic tremolo riff shows in before just absolute chaos is fully unleashed as the riff changes dramatically and blast beats galore. The verses bring in a little bit of like a thrash influence, and you're going to hear me say that a little bit throughout this review. And in the pre-chorus, you get like a Kerry King, Slayer kind of chaotic lead, where it's just not so much about creating a mood, but more just to add on to the chaos and going, wow! Like, look, I'm going up on the whammy bar, now I'm going down, up and down, up and down. The choruses in this track definitely get downright evil with the riffs and the blast beats. And then the bridge brings back more of those thrash metal vibes, similar to Creator and Sodom, particularly the German thrash metal scene for the most part. And the track just ends with more of that evil chaos that this track really had going for it. Basically kind of like standard black metal fare, but with more thrash involved and more chaos than anything else. Then we get into the Howling, and a brief, almost like black and roll riff starts us off before it transitions into that classic black metal tremolo and blasts. And the verses keep building on those tremolos, but the drums are more mid-tempo, which is kind of strange for black metal, because usually whenever you hear crazy tremolo riffs, you're guaranteed to get blast beats. Here, the tremolos are going on, but you're getting more mid-tempo drum work. And the choruses even get groovy and borders on doom metal even for black metal standards, which was really cool to hear it break up the standard black metal tropes. Some of the tremolo riffs happening in this section get really kind of epic here and there. Some tasteful melodic guitar work before the second chorus, and the bridge once again bringing back that thrash influence. Then we get to Saramosa, which starts off on a much slower, doomier note, and the verse even keeps that doom vibe going while still feeling evil and atmospheric. The choruses maintain the doomy nature, but somehow it gets even darker, which I didn't think was possible, but apparently they did. Then things speed up briefly to more groove territory after the first chorus, and then a big tremolo riff comes creeping in there. However, this was where I thought maybe the transition was a little bit off. Like, I thought it was going to build up to like a big epic tremolo and black metal blast beat, but instead it just suddenly gets back to that doom pocket, but we do make up for it with an atmospheric lead that shines through towards the end of the song. Black Cunt being the next track, which make of that title what you will. Big, epic doom riff right away before a huge tremolo riff and blast beats just come in and punch you right in the penis. After the first verse, a doomy breakdown comes in, leading into the second verse, and then following that, the song is building up atmosphere with the riffs that are being provided. Then the chorus has a bit of a groove and almost death metal feel, because it's more of like a marching stomp for the most part. And then afterwards we get a cool like death and roll breakdown that feels kind of similar to like the death and roll era of Entombed or even latter era Satyricon, which was pretty badass and quite catchy. Then again, a lot of riffs you get on this album are quite catchy, especially when they're in that more groovy, doomy pocket. And the vibe continues even through the lead sections. Like, there's a couple different quick leads that happen. Then the doom returns on full force before suddenly a wild, chaotic Slayer lead comes in briefly on top of the tremolo riff and the blast beats to end this thing. Leper's Grace, which was one of my favorite tracks of the album, big blast beat starting off before a dramatic stop and just some epic ambience comes in. Then it gets into like a real groovy bass line and beat that feels very death metal. Kind of more like Darkthrone's Soulside Journey album is where I kind of heard some of this come from, which was really cool. But then it's followed by another killer tremolo riff. And then the verses bring back the thrash feel, only this time, not only does it have some creator feels, but there's even some Demolition Hammer and fellow countrymen Merciless coming in full swing, and I really love the song for the thrashiness that it has. And the choruses even keep that thrashy feeling going, but brings in a little bit more melody on top. Another killer bass line bringing into a groovy breakdown, but still kind of feels more like a thrash breakdown, kind of like something you would hear from like Anthrax or Creator once again, or even Testament. Some chuggy guitars come in briefly. I think it was just for a split second you get this like chugging riff, and then suddenly it gets back to the thrashiness from earlier. So definitely out of the more faster tracks, this one was the standout for me at least. So then the second half is led in with the instrumental Not Son, Nor Man, Nor God, which is mostly a dark piano and melodic guitar instrumental that feels like something you would hear in a horror movie, which was not bad. I actually kind of like this instrumental before it leads into Before the Cataclysm. Big riff and melodic progressions to start this track off on a more epic feel. Into a thrashy and blast-centric verse we go, similar to Dissection and even Immortal. Some doomy breakdowns in the second verse with soaring melodies at the same time. An epic tremolo riff following suit with more of that thrashy energy coming along, before it suddenly stops and builds up with dark, doomy guitars. Another epic tremolo riff comes in before it just dooms again through another verse and the bridge. Beautiful clean guitars come in, as well as some beautiful ambience in the background before the distortion returns and it complements what just happened with a wonderful melodic riff that stomps into a quick soaring lead. And this melodic riff, some people might call me nuts, but it felt kind of Sabaton-ish, which was definitely something different. Things then turn dramatic with some somber melodic guitars, and it concludes with some thick, evil riffs. So Before the Cataclysm definitely stood out because it just goes in all sorts of different directions, from the standard black metal fare to some thrash, to some doom, to some somber melodies. Like, it just goes all over the map. Then we get to We Remain, which is the doomiest song of the entire album. Dark ambience and drums in the beginning to provide atmosphere, followed by some dark vocals from Farida Lamucci from The Devil's Blood, now currently in Molasses. Doom riff and beats come in, leading into the first verse, and the choruses pretty much maintain that Doom atmosphere, while the riff got a little bit more sinister in the choruses. The majority of this track definitely feels like a dark Doom, like Viking battle march. Almost kind of reminded me of something I heard from the latest Asphyx album. Like, it kind of has that, like, marching Doom, like, insanity. Well, not insanity, more like it's subdued. Like, it's subdued with that doomy vibe and that more battle marching feeling going on. Kind of like you got on a few tracks during the new Asphyx album. The riffs change in the bridge to bring in some more of that, like, epic battle feel, leading into a somber little lead section with some clean guitars on top of that playing a lead, which was really unique. And because this one stood out very much among the rest as the slowest, most atmospheric, most, like, battle marching, doomy, foot stomping track, you almost wish this should have been the closer, but we got 2 songs left. Funeral Winter, which is pretty much kind of like standard fare for this album. It's very much in that classic black metal vein, but it's still a really damn good song. Tremolo riff and blast beats right away. This time it's like the section, but even a little bit of dark funeral on top. The verses pretty much keep that driving pace going with those riffs and blasts, whether the beats were to be blasting or just double bass crazy. And then the tremolo riff that starts the chorus felt almost like classic era Dark Throne, which was really cool. And in the bridge, things calm down with clean guitars and operatic ambience and spoken word vocals before it unleashes into another thrashy riff. And then the final chorus comes in to bring back those tremolo riffs from the beginning. Then to the finale track, Septentrion, which, it's funny because that was a song off of the new Abath album. And yeah, but this version of Septentrion, melodic tremolo riff with cool double bass groove to begin, and that groove then turns into a more speed metal inspired riff, kind of like a Motorhead, or not a riff, but a beat, kind of like Motorhead-ish a little bit, which was pretty sweet, while maintaining the epic melodies throughout. And the verses keep that going, while the changes within don't feel odd as it gets into a bit of like a marching breakdown briefly. Then the chorus almost has this like Borknagar feel in the way the melodies pretty much carry the story and the song forward. Things slow down to a big march afterwards before the blast beats returns, and then another somber lead section. Again, a lot of the lead sections are really brief, but they're well executed and done to serve its purpose for the songs. And then the speed metal returns towards the end, and then it ends with another somber tremolo riff and that Motorhead beat to bring the song and album to a close. So overall, I like how for Watain, and I'll be honest, this is my first full album I've ever listened to, Watain. Like, I've heard their name so many times, and I've heard a couple of songs, but they weren't really a band I really got into in depth until this album. Like, I've now listened to this album, and here I thought I'm just going to get kind of like what happened with the new Dark Funeral, a lot of repetitive tremolos and blasts that don't really go anywhere for the most part. Here, they're actually able to do it and do it well and break it up with other elements like death metal and thrash and doom and groove and even some black and roll, death and roll feels here and there, and even some like battle marching stuff going on, like, and some really cool hooks and memorable melodies all throughout, like especially in Septentrion, like those melodic tremolos were well executed and really fun to listen to. So really, as far as if I can find any complaints, maybe some of the tremolo riffs kind of sounded similar, but again, that's kind of a trope with standard black metal, is like a lot of the tremolos are just there to make it sound evil and grisly and grim. But for me, like I said, I've said it many times before, and I'll keep saying it as long as I'm reviewing black metal. I am very picky with what I want to hear in my black metal. And I think here, Watane does what I wish the Dark Funeral album would have done, and that's break up a lot of the standard tropes by incorporating other genre influences. And I love how Watane does it very well with the death metal and the thrash metal and the doom metal and the groove pockets and the melodies. I just really love how they were able to pull all that off into a unique package. So overall, while not the best black metal album of the year for me, it's definitely up there. I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. This was a hell of an album. I actually might pick this one up because the melodies were memorable, the hooks are there, the grooves are there, the thrash, the death, the doom, all on top of the standard black metal tropes that you get within black metal in general. So I like how it's able to diversify itself with all these other influences coming in, rather than just being like, oh, let's just write a bunch of tremolo riffs and blasts and just not do anything else. Thank God these guys have a gift for songwriting and are able to, like I said, diversify their sound more instead of just basically playing stale tremolo black metal. But of course, this is my opinion. 9 out of 10 for the new Watane. But what did you guys think of this album? Let me know in the comments section below. And until next time, horns high. See you soon. So, Scream Bloody Gore, this album for me is my number 4 album. Now let me preface, every single one of these albums in my opinion are 10 out of 10, so ranking this is incredibly difficult, because it can change any given day, but for now, Scream Bloody Gore is ranked as my number 4 album. This is a masterpiece of a debut. It's very thrash oriented, however, but then again, when death metal was starting out with bands like Death and Possessed and Executioner, who later became Obituary, Morbid Angel, it was still very thrash oriented. It wasn't fully realized until the end of the 80s with another album we're going to talk about later.